Story 1. The night had that strange stillness that makes you feel like the world is holding its breath. I remember the road stretching endlessly ahead, the city lights behind us fading into a dull orange glow. My wife, Sarah, had fallen asleep in the passenger seat, her head against the window. Our kids, Lily and Noah, were in the back, dozing to the hum of the tires. We were driving home from my parents' place after a long weekend, and I just wanted to fill up the tank before the long highway stretch. When I saw the 24-hour gas station, glowing lonely under flickering streetlights, it felt like salvation. Just 10 minutes, I told myself, pulling in beside a pump. Inside the car, everything felt safe, warm, familiar. Outside, the world looked forgotten. The gas station sat between two empty buildings, windows boarded up, as if the city itself had left this place behind. I told Sarah to stay with the kids while I went in to pay, but she said she wanted coffee and the kids needed a restroom break. So we all went in together. The door slid open with a soft hiss. The moment we stepped inside, I felt the temperature drop. It wasn't freezing, but the air had that strange bite, like stepping into a place meant for the dead. Then, the hiss came again, and the door behind us locked, not gently, like it had chosen to trap us inside. I turned around, pulling on the handle, but the glass wouldn't move. Sarah tried pressing the open button. Nothing. Her reflection in the glass looked different for just a second, like she blinked half a second too late. Maybe it's timed, I muttered, though I didn't believe myself. The clerk stood behind the counter, staring at us. He was an older man, thin, with pale skin that almost glowed under the fluorescent lights. His eyes didn't blink. His mouth never moved. He just watched. Pump 4, I said, trying to smile. No answer. He turned his head slightly, like a machine being calibrated. Then he raised one arm and pointed toward the aisles. The movement was too slow, too deliberate, like his joints needed oil. Maybe he's deaf, Sarah whispered, but her voice trembled. Lily tugged on my sleeve. Daddy, look. I followed her gaze down aisle 3 and froze. There were people standing there, not moving, just standing. A woman with a purse on her shoulder, a man with a cart full of groceries, both covered in a thin layer of dust, eyes open, faces blank, like statues that used to be human. I took a step closer, then stopped. The dust on their skin wasn't gray. It was ashy white. Bone dust. Sarah grabbed my hand. "Let's go," she whispered. We ran to the door again, but no matter how hard I pulled, it stayed locked. I thought about breaking the glass. I found a metal trash bin and swung it hard, but it didn't even scratch. The sound didn't echo either. It was swallowed by silence. That's when Noah started crying. I lifted him into my arms, whispering it was going to be okay. Then I saw something out of the corner of my eye. Movement near the window, our minivan. Only, we were sitting inside it. Another me, another Sarah, another Lily, and another Noah. The copies were laughing, like a happy family sharing a joke we couldn't hear, and their faces looked slightly wrong. The smiles were too wide, the eyes too bright. The me outside was staring right at me, but his mouth didn't move. It just stretched open, wider and wider, as his laughter grew silent but unbearable. Sarah screamed, pulling the kids close. "What is this?" she cried. I didn't answer. I couldn't. My mouth was dry, and something was whispering faintly behind the counter. The clerk had tilted his head to the side, as if listening to voices coming from the walls. Then, one of the dusty figures twitched. Just once. The woman with the purse turned her head toward us, the sound of sand trickling from her hair. She opened her mouth, and a cloud of gray dust poured out. "Help!" she rasped, in a voice that didn't sound like hers. All the frozen customers came to life at once. Their necks cracked, their joints popped, but their faces remained eerily still. They shuffled forward, reaching out. I grabbed a shelf and pushed it down, sending snacks and bottles flying. Sarah kicked one of them away, screaming as more of that gray dust filled the air. Then I saw something under the flickering lights, a door marked exit near the storage area. We ran for it. It opened, just like that. Outside was silent, darker than before. We rushed to our car, but it was gone. In its place was a row of identical minivans, all humming quietly, headlights on. Each one had a version of us inside, smiling, laughing silently. Then one by one, they turned their heads toward us. Lily screamed, and everything went white. When I woke up, we were back in the van. The engine was running, the kids asleep, Sarah stirring beside me like nothing had happened. The gas gauge was full. The station was gone. Only the dark city stretched ahead, quiet and endless. Sarah smiled faintly. "You filled up already?" I looked at her reflection in the window. For a split second, her eyes were the clerk's. Story 2. They say mirrors don't lie. That might be true, until the night one looked back at me with a mind of its own. We were driving back from my friend's party, the city long behind us and silence heavy inside the car. The clock on the dashboard read 12:41 a.m. The road was empty, the kind that makes you feel like you're drifting through nowhere. My girlfriend, Emma, was dozing beside me, her reflection in the window faint under the glow of the dashboard lights. We were both tired, a little irritable from the long drive. I spotted a gas station up ahead, its fluorescent lights buzzing weakly like a dying insect. The sign flickered, open 24 hours, though it didn't look like anyone had stopped there in years. "Let's just grab some fuel and stretch for a bit," I said. Emma nodded sleepily. The place was dead quiet. The air smelled of rust and cheap coffee. One of the flickering lights above the pumps cast long, warped shadows over everything. I went to refill the tank while Emma said she'd use the restroom. The store itself was empty, except for the attendant slumped behind the counter, face hidden by a magazine. As I pumped gas, I caught my own reflection in the glass of the store door and paused. It was there, but just for a second, my reflection didn't move when I did. It was subtle, like a skipped frame in a video, but it made something in my spine tighten. I called to Emma, half joking, "Don't stare at the mirror too long. They say they steal a piece of your soul." She didn't answer. When I went inside, the clerk didn't even look up. The store smelled faintly of lemon cleaner and something metallic underneath. The fluorescent lights flickered harder here, buzzing like flies. I looked around, rows of snacks, energy drinks, everything perfectly still. Then I noticed a sign hanging above a narrow hallway leading to the restrooms, a metal mirror square right at the end. That's strange, I thought. Who puts a mirror outside a restroom? I walked closer and realized it wasn't a mirror at all. It was a glass panel, like a two-way window. My reflection looked off. The color seemed wrong, and when I raised my hand, the reflection copied me, but half a second late. My chest tightened. "Emma?" I called. Her voice echoed faintly from inside the restroom. "One sec." I looked back at the mirror again. My reflection smiled. I wasn't smiling. That was enough. I backed away, heart pounding. Emma came out a moment later, brushing her hair back like nothing was wrong. "You okay? You look like you saw a ghost." "Yeah," I said, forcing a weak laugh. "Just tired." We paid for the gas and walked back outside. The clerk gave us the faintest nod, his lips twitching in a strange half grin. Something in his eyes looked aware. When I stepped out, I noticed the air felt heavier than before. The world seemed dimmer, though the station lights were still on. Emma walked ahead of me, humming softly. I opened the car door and sat in the driver's seat. Emma got in on the passenger side. I turned the key, but the engine didn't start. The dashboard lights flickered. "Great," I muttered, leaning forward to try again. That's when I noticed movement in the corner of my eye. Someone walking out of the convenience store. Emma. Still wearing that same denim jacket, same ponytail, same sleepy step. I turned to the passenger seat slowly. Emma was sitting right beside me. Her face was pale in the dashboard glow. The other Emma reached the car door, knocking gently on the window, her eyes wide with panic. Her lips moved, whispering something I couldn't hear. Then I realized what she was saying. Don't trust her. I froze. My hands gripped the steering wheel so tight my knuckles went white. Inside the car, Emma, my Emma, turned her head toward me and smiled. The same smile my reflection had given me in the store. It didn't reach her eyes. They were too dark, too still. Outside, the other Emma repeated her words, louder this time. Don't trust her. That isn't me. The one beside me laughed softly. She's delusional, Alex. Open the door. Let her in. We'll help her. Her voice was calm, but behind it was something hollow, something rehearsed. I didn't move. The two versions of her stood like mirror images. One outside, terrified, one inside, smiling too wide. They both turned their heads toward me and at the same time said my name. Alex. My ears rang. The air around me thickened, like the sound itself was pressing down on me. What's happening? I whispered. Neither answered. The clone outside slammed her hands against the glass. The window cracked, spiderwebbing instantly. The Emma inside grabbed my arm hard, nails digging into my skin. I jerked away, reaching for the door handle, but the lock clicked on its own. Then both of them started to laugh. Perfectly synchronized. Through the fractured glass, their faces aligned for a moment. Two identical halves, forming something that wasn't human anymore. Their eyes flickered like the lights above the pump. The world blurred. The sound of their laughter mixed with static, and for a second I couldn't tell if I was inside the car or outside it. When I opened my eyes, dawn was breaking. My car sat in front of a different station miles away. The tank was full. Emma was gone. No phone, no jacket. Only one thing was left on the passenger seat, a small hand mirror, cracked down the middle. My reflection smiled back at me, but when I looked away, it kept smiling, and that's when I finally understood. Maybe the reflection never wanted to follow us. Maybe it wanted to lead. Story 3. I used to think radio static was harmless. Just noise, empty space between stations. But after that night with my son, I can't even stand the sound anymore. It still feels like someone whispering from the dark. It started on a muggy summer evening when Ryan and I were driving back from visiting my sister on the other side of the city. The sky had turned a deep gray, thick with the promise of rain. Ryan sat beside me, earbuds in, tapping away on his phone. We had a 2-hour drive ahead, and the gas tank was running low. When the glowing sign of a gas station appeared through the drizzle, I felt relief mix with fatigue. It was one of those large city stations. Bright lights, vending machines outside, a few cars at the pumps. It looked safe. I pulled in, parked under a canopy, and shut off the engine. As soon as I did, the car radio clicked on by itself. It shouldn't have. The key was out of the ignition. The display blinked. At first, it played faint static, just a low hum. Then, through the hiss, came something else. Brief flashes of a voice. At first it sounded like overlapping words, too distorted to understand. Then, one phrase stood out. "Can you hear me?" I turned the knob off. The static stopped. Ryan looked up from his phone. "Mom, did you just hear that?" My hand hovered over the buttons. "Probably interference." He frowned but didn't argue. I pushed open the door and stepped into the damp air, glancing around at the steady flow of people. No one else seemed bothered. Just another night. Inside the store, the bright fluorescent lighting felt blinding after the dark road. Shelves were lined neatly, a refrigerator hummed, and the cashier, a man with tired eyes and thinning gray hair, stood behind the counter scrolling on his phone. I went to grab a bottle of water and a snack for Ryan. The faint crackle of an intercom broke through the store's background noise. A voice came through, distorted and trembling. "Help. Somebody. Please. Help us." Everyone stopped and turned toward the ceiling speakers. The voice shuddered again, breaking in and out of static. "Get us out." Then silence. The air was still, thick with confusion. A man at the register looked around uneasily. "Is that a joke? A recording?" The cashier blinked, visibly startled, then shook his head. "That's impossible. The speakers don't work. Haven't in years." I felt my stomach tighten. "What do you mean they don't work? We all heard it." He stepped out from behind the counter, his voice trembling slightly. "We cut the intercom years ago. The wiring's dead. Power surge fried them. There's no feed, no audio." Static crackled again. This time, louder. A woman's voice whispered through the sound, so close it felt like it was coming right into my ear. Margaret. That was my name. My throat went dry. "Did anyone hear that?" The others just looked at each other nervously. The sound faded again, leaving the buzz of the lights in its place. Ryan came rushing inside a moment later, his eyes wide. "Mom! The car! Radio turned back on! It said the same thing!" We didn't wait around. My hands shook as I paid for the gas, and we were back in the car within minutes. I turned the key, and the radio hissed to life again, this time louder than before. Ryan reached to unplug it, but I stopped him. The voice returned. "Don't leave us." I switched the radio off completely. The sound kept playing. "Turn it off!" Ryan cried. "I did!" We sped out of the station, tires skidding slightly on wet pavement. The sound finally began to fade as we re-entered the highway, and my heartbeat started to slow. For a few minutes, we drove in silence. The road was slick and empty, only the wipers breaking the quiet. Then Ryan whispered, "Mom, do you hear that?" From the back seat came a faint hum, almost unnoticeable at first. Then, through the hum, the same whispering voices began to pour out. Softer this time, clearer. "Ryan. Margaret." We both turned. The back seat was empty. The sound came from nowhere and everywhere at once. I could feel cold air against my neck, even though the windows were closed. "Pull over," Ryan said. "Please, just stop." I pulled onto the shoulder, the static still filling the air. It wasn't coming from the speakers anymore. It was inside the car itself. "Why are you doing this?" I screamed, turning around. The whispers grew louder, pleading, overlapping. "Trapped! Metal! Light! Can't see!" Ryan grabbed my arm. "Mom, let's go!" I slammed the gas pedal, desperate to escape, but the headlights were starting to flicker. The dashboard lights blinked in rhythm with the voices, like they were feeding off them. For a moment, the static cut out completely. Then a single sentence came through, crystal clear. "They're coming!" The engine died. Total silence. We sat there, breathless. The street was empty. No cars, no noise, nothing. I reached for my phone, but it was dead too. Then, out of the corner of my eye, I saw figures standing near the roadside. 4 of them. Faint, unmoving silhouettes. They shimmered like heat waves, their faces hidden in darkness. When I blinked, they were gone. The radio blinked one last time before going completely black. We never saw that gas station again. We tried to find it the next morning, but where it should have stood was an abandoned lot, weeds swallowing cracked pavement. Ryan doesn't talk about that night now. But sometimes when we drive at night, the speakers hiss faintly with static, and I swear I can still hear my name hiding inside the sound. Story 4. I used to think the scariest thing about long drives at night was falling asleep behind the wheel. I was wrong. The real horror is realizing you've been awake the entire time, just driving in circles through a world that shouldn't exist. It started as a simple detour. My wife, Leah, and I were heading back from her parents' place after dinner. It was past midnight, and the city around us was quiet, just the hum of streetlights and the distant drone of traffic. We'd been to this route dozens of times before. I could have driven it blindfolded. When the gas light flickered on, I spotted a familiar station up ahead. Blue neon letters glowed weakly across its roof. Wright's Gas and Go. We'd stopped there many times before, usually for coffee and fuel on late drives. It was comforting, in a strange way, like a small anchor of normal in empty darkness. Leah smiled sleepily. We always end up here. Yeah, I said, pulling in beside Pump 6. Like clockwork. The air outside was cool, carrying the faint smell of rain. Fluorescent lights hummed overhead, and a cricket chirped somewhere in the distance. I filled the tank while Leah went inside for coffee. Everything felt normal. Too normal. When she came back, her expression was a little tense. That guy behind the counter, he didn't say anything, just stared at me when I asked for sugar. I half laughed. Maybe he's tired. She didn't laugh back. We got into the car, coffee cups steaming in the cup holders. I started the engine, and our GPS restarted automatically. The familiar voice spoke, "Continue for 1 mile, then turn left." We followed the directions without question. 1 turn, then another, then out of nowhere, the same gas station appeared again. Leah leaned forward, frowning. "Wait, is that—" "Yeah," I said slowly, pulling past the sign again. "That's Wright's Gas and Go." We laughed nervously, trying to brush it off. Maybe the GPS had glitched. Maybe we'd looped a block. City roads can be deceiving at night. But after the 3rd time, the laughter stopped. Every single route I tried, left, right, straight, led us back to that same glowing sign, the same cracked pavement, the same buzz of lights. Even the half-filled trash can by Pump 6 was exactly as before. I turned off the GPS and used my phone's maps instead. The blue dot spun wildly before freezing on the gas station again. Leah's voice trembled. "Take another route. Try anything." We drove for half an hour. The skyline never changed. The same office buildings ghosted the horizon. The same stretch of road gleamed under the same dying streetlights. No cars, no pedestrians, no moon. It felt like the world had fallen into a loop, and we were the only ones awake inside it. When the silence became unbearable, Leah turned on the radio. Static. Not even a faint signal, just the empty hiss of white noise. "Maybe we should go back," she whispered. "Ask the clerk for help." I didn't want to, but the road kept turning itself. No matter where we went, we ended up back at those glowing blue letters. So finally, I stopped at the same pump, Pump 6, and went inside. The door chime rang. The clerk was still there, wearing a plain gray uniform and a vacant expression. His name tag said Eli. He looked like he hadn't blinked in years. "Hey," I said carefully. "We've been driving in circles. All the routes keep bringing us back here. Can you tell me how to get out of the area?" He tilted his head slightly, eyes blank. "Out?" "Yes, out, to the highway." He said nothing, sliding open a drawer beneath the counter. Then he pulled out a small piece of paper and handed it to me, a receipt. Across the top, printed in faded ink, were the words, "Welcome home, Pump 6. I stared at it, heart pounding. What's this supposed to mean? He smiled faintly. It wasn't human, more like someone mimicking the idea of a smile. Leah's voice cracked from behind me. "Ben, let's go." I turned, and for a second, the reflection in the store window caught my eye. I froze. Outside, in the reflection, Leah and I were standing by the car, but not moving. Just 2 pale outlines, perfectly still. The real Leah was trembling beside me, clutching my arm. Yet our reflections stayed calm, motionless. I blinked, and the reflections turned their heads toward us. Something inside me broke. I grabbed Leah's hand, and we ran outside. But when we jumped into the car, it was already running, keys in the ignition, headlights on, just like before. "Ben," she whispered. We didn't leave it like that. I shifted into drive and hit the gas. The roads blurred, the station disappeared behind us, swallowed by the dark. But then, after a few minutes, the GPS screen lit again. Its soft, robotic voice returned. "Proceed to the nearest fuel station. Wright's gas and go." Every attempt to shut it off failed. The voice grew louder, now echoing through the speakers in a tone I swore sounded almost eager. "Proceed to Wright's gas and go." Leah started crying quietly. I just kept driving, gripping the wheel until my hands hurt. The fuel gauge didn't move. The sky stayed the same shade of dead gray. Hours must have passed, or maybe minutes. Time stopped meaning anything. When we finally saw the sign again, glowing blue in the distance, I didn't even feel fear anymore. Just the numb certainty that we had never left. That maybe we never could. The receipt was still in my hand, smeared from sweat but clearly legible. "Welcome home, Pump 6. I think the worst part wasn't being trapped. It was realizing the gas pump was still running when we arrived. Filling. Always filling. And maybe it wasn't gas it was feeding on anymore. Story 5. It's strange the things your mind does when you're lost in routine. Like convincing yourself that the same old trip for gas will be safe. I guess if I'd listened to the uneasy voice in the back of my mind that night, I might have kept driving. We'd been on the road for hours, moving through swollen city streets carved out by the rain. My wife, Marissa, sat next to me, her hand resting lightly on our daughter Emma's shoulder in the back seat. The wipers beat an anxious rhythm as I turned into a glowing gas station, the neon sign flickering in the downpour. "Just 5 minutes," I said. Marissa smiled, her eyes tired but gentle. Emma was already leaning over, sketching shapes on the window fog with her finger. I told them to stay in the car, promising to be quick. The little store was warm inside but empty, shelves packed tight with snacks, magazines, and the faint smell of burnt coffee. The clerk barely looked up as I paid for the fuel. The air outside was thicker, city noise muffled by the rain. For a moment, I hesitated, then hurried back to the parking lot and stopped dead. Our car was gone. I spun, blinking through the rain. There, a car in Bay 3. Same model, same color, same dent on the rear bumper. My heart began pounding. Was this some cruel prank? Wrong car? I took a step forward and saw 2 shapes inside, someone in the driver's seat and someone behind the fogged passenger window. I crept closer. My sneakers splashed through puddles. The window rolled down and a pale face appeared. Marissa, but older, lines drawn deep across her forehead, eyes wide with terror. Emma was beside her, pressed against the passenger seat, face twisted by something more than fear. Marissa shook her head, frantic, her hair streaked with gray. She reached out, desperate, then slammed the lock button. I hit the glass. "Marissa! Emma!" she mouthed. "No, not safe." Her eyes begged me not to open the door. A shadow flickered under the harsh light. I whirled around. An attendant I hadn't seen before stood behind me, holding my keys low at his side. He was tall, skin sagging and waxy, as if he'd been carved from old candle. His gaze was empty, holes where eyes should wait. "Time to go, sir," he whispered. His voice had the dryness of paper left in rain. My body froze as he pointed at the car. Nothing left here but shadows. I stared at the car. Marissa pressed against the glass, Emma's face distorted in terror, their eyes pleading for help. Their lips moved as they whispered something I couldn't hear. The attendant stepped closer, the skin on his hand rippling as he pressed my keys into my palm. As I stumbled back, the car engine flared, headlights stabbing the rain. Marissa's face fell from the panic to something completely hollow, a mask I didn't recognize. The car backed out of Bay 3 and vanished into darkness, tail lights blurring red. The attendant grinned, lips stretching impossibly wide. "Bay 3 is always full, sir, but every night it empties when you leave." I was shaking, heart thumping. Another car rolled into the station. Mine. At least it looked like mine. The doors swung open, and behind the wheel I saw myself. Same jacket, same tired eyes, but they sparkled with a strange, cruel amusement. The other me waved, slow and mocking. Behind him, Marissa and Emma smiled, eyes far too bright, their faces lit with a joy that felt wrong. I ran to the store, gasping for breath. The clerk ignored me, fiddling with the register. I screamed, "Help! My family! Someone!" He glanced up, one eyebrow raised. "You came in alone, sir." I bolted back into the night, searching every bay, every corner, but the rain swallowed my shouts. The attendant was gone. Only the neon buzz and the reflection of strange faces in the windows remained. In the quiet, I heard Emma's voice through the static of the rain speakers, soft and echoing. "Daddy, where are you?" I spun but saw nothing but empty lots. Then I looked at my keys, slick with water, colder than ice. Scratched into the side was a message, Bay 3, always waiting. I ran, finding my car empty, engine cold. The clock on the dashboard blinked midnight. I sat, head in my hands, as the world outside spun quietly, its secrets sealed by rain. Now, every time I pass a gas station at night, I can't help searching the bays, just in case I see Marissa's face, older and terrified, shaking her head and wishing, just for a moment, that things could go back to before. But Bay 3 is always full, and somewhere, the shadows wait, holding my family, changed forever. Story 6. I've always wondered what secrets gas stations hold after midnight. Most nights, it's just sleepy cashiers and stale coffee. But on the night my wife and I stopped for snacks during our drive, I discovered the kind of secret no one should ever see. We were both restless. The city roads wound endlessly behind us, windows streaked with rain. Rachel gripped my hand tightly as she gazed through the windshield, streetlights stretching out in watery halos. We pulled into a fluorescent-lit station, one we'd never seen before, hoping for a drink and a quick stretch before heading home. Inside, everything looked normal enough. Rows of chips, magazines, the faint buzz of an old fridge. Rachel chose some crackers, and I wandered near the counter, drawn by a strange hum behind a battered staff-only door. Oddly, the clerk didn't seem to notice. He just stared placidly ahead, unmoving, like he was glued to the spot. Curiosity nudged me on. The door gaped open a sliver. Just a peek, I told myself. What was the worst that could happen? The humming grew louder as I eased inside. I found myself in a cramped office glowing with dozens of CCTV monitors. The wall was covered floor to ceiling. Each screen showed gas stations flooded by eerie white light, blinking, flickering, catching shadows older than the night. And then, on the bottom left, I saw us. Rachel and me, standing at the counter, our faces pale beneath sickly bulbs. I blinked, uncertain. Was it live footage? The screen began to fast forward. On the grainy monitor, Rachel and I grew uneasy, fidgeting, glancing over our shoulders. Then suddenly, we slumped to the ground, motionless. I felt a chill. It wasn't just a technical glitch. That was us, lying face up, eyes wide, limbs twisted awkwardly on the linoleum floor. A crack of thunder outside rattled the window. I tried to look away, but every monitor seemed to zoom in. Close-ups of Rachel's face, lips parted as if whispering, desperate to speak. My own reflection stared back from the screen, mouth open in a silent scream. A flicker in the corner of the room pulled my attention. The lights began to fade, drowning the room in shadows. One by one, the monitors flickered out, leaving the leftmost still glowing. The fast-forward kept looping, showing our bodies falling again and again, like the world wanted to memorize every detail of our collapse. Suddenly, the door behind me clicked shut. I jolted, heart in my throat, and tried the handle. Locked. I pounded, shouting for help, but the hum of electronics drowned out my voice. A voice crackled from the ceiling, low and warbling, almost metallic. "What you saw is what's coming." The sound crawled down my spine, oily and cold. I turned back to the last monitor. Rachel's face filled the screen, older now, her eyes darkly sunken. She mouthed my name. I tried screaming, but nothing came out. Outside the room, I heard footsteps, slow, deliberate, dragging across the tiles. My eyes darted between the monitors and the door. The clerk's shadow flashed across several screens, each time his expression unchanged, but his movements slightly different. A smile warped, a hand raised as if waving goodbye. Static filled the air. My hands trembled. On the screen, Rachel sat up, reached for me, but her movements lagged. My own image beside her began to fade, dissolving into a smear of pixels. I ran to the opposite wall, searching for another exit. None. Just cables, monitors, and endless loops of suffering. The room grew colder. Electricity buzzed angrily. I saw my own reflection in the nearest black screen. Eyes wild, face pale, mouth still wide in terror. Then, I heard Rachel's voice from outside, faint but frantic. "Tom, where are you? What's happening?" Her words broke through the static, barely audible. I screamed, slammed my fists against the door, begging to escape. Suddenly, the screens blinked back to life. All at once, hundreds of images of me alone, cowering, unable to run. The clerk's voice echoed, twisting every syllable. "You're part of the story now." With one final flicker, every monitor turned black. The hum stopped. The silence pressed in. The lights outside the door faded to nothing, the only sound Rachel's distant, panicked shout. When the door finally creaked open, there was no clerk, no hum, no trace of Rachel. I stumbled out into the store, the aisles empty, the windows pitch black. My own shadow stretched long behind me, then twisted into shapes that weren't mine. Now, whenever I pass a gas station at night, I fear the monitors are still watching. And I wonder which version of me is in there, looping on repeat, waiting for someone else to take a peek. For more stories like this, like, share, and subscribe Goofy Horror.